The rules of engagement outlined herein are not set in stone and may vary from state to state. You should check with your own attorney or the county prosecutor just to confirm that these things fit your locality. Section 5.2 under this Chapter 5, Rules of Engagement. This is the chapter, as noted earlier, that explains when lethal force can and cannot be used. There are 5 criteria that must be met to justify the use of lethal force. In order to justify the use of lethal force, i.e., establishing the defense of self-defense, the discharge of a firearm at another person shall be instituted only when all of the following apply. And number 1 under this is, you were not at fault or did not create the situation that gave rise to the taking of another's life. In other words, you can't start the fight or egg someone on so that when they attack you, you can then bring out the hardware. Say in the event of a traffic accident or other confrontational incident, you must remain cool at all times. Should the other party start name-calling or issuing threats, it is imperative that you back off. Apologize if that's what the other party is demanding, and quietly wait for the police. Traffic accidents are subjective and have the potential to escalate to violence. Lest you later be deemed the aggressor in a court of law, it is always better to save your explanations for the police. However, if you find yourself in a shouting match that seems headed for violence, withdraw and say words to the effect that you are capitulating. This restores your right to self-defense. You've now called it quits, and the other guy, he could be the aggressor now. If during an affray your adversary becomes disabled on the same token and walks away or indicates that he has had enough and the threat is no longer real, your right to self-defense loses its necessity. Because you're carrying the ace in the hole, you must never be the aggressor. Now, that's the first rule. And in addition to this rule and the other 4 criteria, other headings in this chapter include warning shots, lethal force is forbidden, shooting to wound, and shooting to kill. If you're involved in a lethal force incident and you don't comply with these well-established precepts, you could be facing prison and or civil suits, even if you were the good guy and the loser you took out was the bad guy.
Chuck, can you bear with me just a second, please?
Mm-hmm.
This is Talkin to America. I'm your host, Aaron Zellman. Our subject today is when is the proper time to shoot someone in self-defense, and our guest is Chuck Klein. Chuck, I believe you were going to start on Chapter 6.
Yes, Chapter 6.0, Use of Lethal Force. Purpose. This chapter is intended to describe some of the conditions and results of utilizing lethal force. Headings under this chapter include actual engagement, downside of lethal force, the aftermath, and upside of lethal force. Chapter 7, the defense of self-defense. This section drives home the point that should you be charged with a crime, the defense of self-defense places the burden of proof on you. You must prove you had to use lethal force. In other words, if you are forced to shoot someone to defend yourself, the admission that you were the shooter is all the state needs to prove the crime of felony assault, or murder if the perp died, because you admit to purposely shooting him. It will then be up to you to prove you were justified in doing so, and if you didn't comply with all of the rules of engagement as outlined in Chapter 5.0, you could be in deep trouble. Chapter 8 is a glossary of terms related to firearms and use of force and can be very helpful in describing a use of force incident to the police, the media, or your attorney. Using an incorrect term could paint a different picture than the one you intended. Chapter 9 is a series of blank spaces where you, as a prudent person, can document your personal information about licenses, training, practice sessions, firearm courses you've taken, and related books that you've read. things that establish you as a prudent person.
Chuck, we're coming to the end of our program. I was wondering, do you have any final thoughts on solutions to the problems facing American gun owners and those who feel the need to carry concealed weapons?
Yes. I'm concerned that there are far too many restrictions placed on the decent law-abiding citizen who wants or needs to own and carry firearms. Not only that, but these laws, statutes, and court decrees are confusing and not universally applied. Even our Second Amendment, our beloved Second Amendment, is subject to subjectiveness by persons who have the power to enforce restrictions. There are people out there who are working every day to pass restrictive firearm rules, and when they can't muster legislative support, they connive to twist and usurp what legal plain language protections we now have. Citizens who carry must not only be aware of local as well as national laws, but they must have the wherewithal, the grit to defend themselves in a court of law should some police officer or prosecutor, well-intentioned or not, charges them with a gun-related crime. Belonging to some of the gun rights organizations is one way to keep abreast of the intricacies of firearm-related legal rulings.
Chuck, anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Well, yeah. Until the world becomes that better place, study my book. It might keep you around until then. Call 1-800-374-4049 to order the book. $5.95 each, postpaid. That's 1-800-374-4049. See you on the range.
Thank you, Chuck. We appreciate you being a guest today. This has been Talkin to America. I've been your host, Aaron Zellman. Our subject has been, when is the right time to shoot someone in self-defense? Our guest has been Chuck Klein. And remember, if you won't defend your rights, don't complain when you lose them.
Talking to America is a production of JPFO.org.